Hey everyone, this is James Wilson with MTB Strength Training Systems and BikeJames.com, and welcome to another Riding for a Lifetime podcast. In this podcast, I'm going to go over the strength training basics for the 40-plus-year-old rider. Basically, what are the basic parameters that you want to be looking for with a strength training program? There's a lot of different things that you can do, but there's some basic things that you want to make sure that you are doing. So whether you're designing your own workout program or you are trying to evaluate a good workout program for you to follow, if you understand what some of these basic things are, then it can help you make better decisions. And so I wanted to share these things with you today in this podcast. So first of all, why do you care? Why do you need to know this stuff as a 40-plus-year-old rider? As you get older, strength training goes from something that is good to do to something that you must do. Okay, like I think that it's something that you should be doing all the time. I've been training since high school. I'm going on 30 plus years of strength training, and I can say that it definitely has helped me in many, many different ways. But when we are younger, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you can get away with not strength training. Like they say, the advantages of youth are wasted on the young. And that is one of the advantages of youth, is that you just naturally get and maintain strength and power just as a result of the hormones and just different things going on in our bodies that allow for us to more easily build and maintain strength. And so you don't need to, you can get away with not doing it. Again, I think that everybody would be better off if they did it. You're definitely better off if you have been doing it. If you get to your 40s and you realize, like, holy crap, I need to start strength training, it's definitely not too late, but you are behind the 8 ball, right? So if you have been doing strength training consistently throughout your life, then you're going to have a lot easier time with age-related declines in strength and power and muscle loss that start to really influence our ability to do what we want at the levels that we want to do them. Okay, so like I said, losing strength, muscle mass, power, these are all realities once you hit that 40-plus mark. Again, it can change. It's different for everybody, but in general, once you hit 40 years old, at some point you're going to start experiencing these age-related declines in these things. And strength training is like the fountain of youth, like literally, right? It is going to slow down and even reverse that process. So again, like I said, if you have not been strength training and doing the stuff up until you realize, like, holy crap, I'm getting older, I need to do it, you can actually reverse where you're at, right? You can gain strength, you can gain power, you can gain muscle mass, and if you have been doing it, then you can continue to see gains in your 40s and 50s in some areas. But the main idea is for you to be trying to slow that decline, right? So if you can just maintain your strength and power and muscle mass as you're getting older for another decade or so, and then as it starts to decline, that decline is slowed down because of strength training. Well, this is the number one tactic for you. If your goal is to do this for a lifetime, if you want to be able to ride at a reasonable level and enjoy riding, and besides that, just be able to function as a human being and be able to just enjoy being alive and all the things that it offers us, then you want to get and stay strong. And again, this will help you avoid a lot of the age-related physical decline for as long as possible. Again, the thing that we think about, man, when if you have a relative or you've seen someone who age has just ravaged them, they're in their 70s or 80s, and it's like, man, they're just barely able to get around, they're just not very well high functioning. This is the thing that freaks us out, right? This is the thing that we want to avoid. We look at that and we're like, man, getting old sucks. And yeah, getting old definitely is not it's going to suck on some level, but it can suck a lot less if you are avoiding these things. It's not age, it's the decline that comes with age that leads to this stuff, right? And so if you're able to avoid that decline for as long as possible and then minimize it, this is where you see the people who are still in their 70s, 80s, or 90s, and they're able to get around and function and still, move well and interact with their environment in a positive way, right? They're not just fragile shells of their former self, that any perturbance, any problem is going to lead to problems for them, right? And so this is our number one way. Strength training is your number one way to avoid that fate. Plus, strength training will improve your strength, power, and muscle mass, and that will improve your performance and reduce your risk of injury. So you're not only going to insure against future losses, but you will see performance improvements now. So it's not like this is something that you're going to do and it's like, well, just trust me in the future, this will pay off. It's like, no, man, if you especially if you have not been following a good strength training program and you start strength training and following these basic things that I'm going to outline here, then you will see improvements in your riding, in your just ability to interact with your environment on a day-to-day basis. And so you're going to see that today. Well, maybe not today if you just start today, but very quickly in the future, you will see these improvements. And then it's also acting as, like I said, insurance against future losses. So there are a lot of things that can help when it comes to strength training. But if you want to maximize your results and minimize your chances of injury, because again, it doesn't matter how fit you are if you're hurt, right? If you're following the best workout program in the world, but it's resulting in you getting hurt or just not being able to follow because of it just takes too much time and energy, then it doesn't matter, right? Like the best program in the world is going to be the best program in the world for you in the context of what's going to work for you. And so that's where knowing some of these basic things will help you make a smarter decision as far as like what is going to help you. So I will say before we get into it, almost anything can work, right? There's a strength coach I've actually had on the podcast before, is a really well-known strength coach named Dan John, and he's got a saying that anything works for about 6 weeks, okay? And that's the truth. You can do just about any program out there. Again, there's the extremes where it's either not intense enough or too intense, right? But a lot of stuff is going to fall in this middle ground, and it's going to work for about 6 weeks. That does not mean that it is the best thing for you to be doing, right? Eventually it will stop working, and it may not actually build the type of strength and fitness that you're looking for to improve your mountain biking. So again, this is, for example, like, CrossFit type workouts are a really good example of this. People start doing these workouts and then they will see results from it, right? But after about 6 to 8 weeks, those results are going to start to slow down, and eventually the negative stuff starts to add up. And again, if you're at a good CrossFit gym that knows what they're doing, then good for you. But again, a lot of the CrossFit stuff out there that I continue to see, despite their statements to the contrary about how they've tried to improve their programming, it's still just a freaking shit show when it comes to what exactly they're trying to accomplish with their workouts. And so again, what they get you better at a lot of times, those workouts, they get you better at working out. And if that's not your goal, if your goal is to get better at something specific like mountain biking, then there are better ways to go about doing that. But again, like I said, just almost anything can work. But is it really the most efficient use of your time? And is it actually something that's going to set you up for long-term success? Or is it just kind of like a short-term thing? Again, if you tell me that, you got 6 weeks to get in the best shape possible for a mountain bike race, or you need to lose as much fat as possible in the next 6 weeks, we can do some stuff that is going to be pretty extreme, that's going to deliver quick results, but it's not sustainable, and those results are not stable, right? And so what you're looking for is a sustainable program that's going to deliver stable results, something that's actually going to stick around. If you have to take some time off, you're not going to see it just all go away super quick, right? So with that in mind, here are some basic guidelines to help you with designing or choosing a training program that is going to help you with that MTB specific fitness and help improve your overall longevity and health. Because again, this is our two goals as a 40 plus year old rider. It's like not only riding better tomorrow, but it's being able to do this into our 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond is really the goal. So our health and longevity become a big part of the equation as well. So number one, I'm just going to kind of start from the big picture and then kind of zero in on some specifics when it comes to working out. But starting with the big picture, 2 to 4 days a week is plenty for you to do strength training. Again, especially if you're a mountain biker, right? If you are riding your bike, then you don't need to be in the gym 5+ days a week. And again, if you really enjoy working out and it's your jam and you set up recovery and things to be able to do that, like you certainly can get away with working out more. But for most riders that I have worked with, the 2 to 4 days a week is plenty. And it's probably closer to 2 than it is to 4 for most people. Now, the more you're riding and the more important your performance is at riding, the fewer days that you want to lift. Okay, the more you're trying to focus on strength training, or building muscle, then the more often you want to lift. And so what this basically breaks down to keep it simple, like during the riding season, 2 days a week is probably going to be plenty. If you're getting out on the trail and you're riding 2, 3, 4+ days a week, then 2 days a week of strength training is going to be plenty. If you're in an off season or there's a period where you're not able to ride as much, or you've identified like, hey, I really want to spend a period of time, and this is where the off season comes in, right? It's not like you stop riding. It's just, if you're working out 3 to 4 days a week and your focus is on building strength or muscle, then your workouts are going to affect you, right? They're going to affect your ability to perform well on the bike. And so if you're wanting to prioritize riding and you want to make sure that when you're getting on the bike, you feel as fresh as possible and you're able to perform as well as possible, then you still need to strength train, but you're prioritizing riding. And that's where, the fewer days a week comes in. And if you're prioritizing your strength, building strength and or muscle, then you're saying like, hey, I know sometimes when I get on the bike, I'm going to be a little sore and tired from working out, but that's okay. That's this period of time that I've made a conscious decision for that to be the case, right? And that's where you would, up the volume, right? Doing 3 to 4 days a week in the off season. Again, if you're not riding at all, right, you're in a period where the weather or whatever has just got you not able to ride, then definitely the more you're able to get into the gym, the better. So, but again, 2 to 4 days a week in general is going to be plenty for most of us. You don't have to be hitting the gym 4, 5, 6 days a week to see results. Again, 3 is kind of that sweet spot. I think that if you're able to get to the gym consistently 3 days a week, that is going to really be good for the vast majority of people listening to this year round, right? Whether it's the riding season or not. And again, I'll explain more about kind of how you can lift 3 days a week, both in the off season and the in season, and just kind of modify and moderate what you're doing within the training sessions to reflect our goals. Again, if our goal is to be able to ride as much as possible and feel like our performance on the bike is best, then we need to be lifting in a way that allows that, and vice versa, right? So when we are lifting, right, this brings us to our second piece of advice. You want to focus on big compound movements, right? So again, we don't want to be training like a bodybuilder where we're doing a bunch of isolation exercises for our body parts. It's not the best way to do it as an athlete, which you are an athlete if you're training for mountain biking. But with that in mind, doing some isolation exercises is not going to make you dysfunctional, and it can be beneficial in some cases. And again, I think that I've talked about this before, how just my own personal experience, I feel like I, with myself and the people that I worked with, really kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater when it came to quote unquote functional training, and anything that was an isolation movement was viewed as non-functional and really had no place in my program. And as I've gotten older and got a little bit more experience and just kind of learned more, I realized that was probably unnecessary, that there is a time and a place for some isolation exercises. So again, the vast majority of your lifts, you want to be focused on getting stronger or doing more volume, which is your sets and reps with the main movement patterns and the exercises that train them, right? So your squat, your hinge, which is like your deadlift type movement, pushing, pulling, carrying weight, rotation, either creating or resisting rotation. Like these are the 6 like kind of foundational skills, movement skills that you want to be working on. And you can also break these down into bilateral and unilateral movements, right? So you can have squats and you can have lunges, you can have deadlifts and then single leg deadlifts, you can have your bench press and then single arm dumbbell bench press, right? Like, so you can also break these up into, like I said, like unilateral and bilateral exercises as well. But those 6 things, the squat, hinge, push, pull, carry, and rotate, like these are the 6 core things that you want to make sure that you are addressing in your workout program, and the big compound movements that work these things are going to make up the bulk of your training program. But like I said, doing some isolation exercises, like doing some bicep curls, doing some tricep extensions, doing some shrugs or calf raises, some lateral raises, like these are not going to suddenly make you dysfunctional, right? Especially if the bulk of what you're doing are functional compound movements, then you're definitely not going to create problems by doing some isolation, quote unquote isolation exercises. And the thing with the isolation stuff, again, you can do it in a way that it doesn't elicit a lot of isometric tension in the body, right? If you're doing some sort of machine type thing, which again, I'm not saying never do, but if you can be doing something that still requires your body. So let's say you're doing like a bicep curl and you're doing a standing bicep curl, then your body has to isometrically contract to create the platform for you to curl around. And I think that isometric strength that you get from that is something that we really discounted. As this is one of the reasons that I feel that isolation exercises kind of got we swung the pendulum too far the other direction, that having isolation exercises in your program helps to build this total body isometric strength. Because again, it's not like the rest of your body is just relaxed and doing nothing while you're doing bicep curls. Like the rest of your body is having to organize itself in a way to create the isometric platform for you to create the movement around. And there's still value in that. And you can also use this for doing some muscle building and muscle preservation. Again, another thing that I've talked about a lot when you hit that 40 plus mark, there is muscle wasting, right? There's a fancy word for it, sarcopenia or something like that, which is the fancy scientific term for age-related muscle wasting. And so you do need to think about building and preserving muscle as you get older. Again, this is another big distinction between training for a 40-plus-year-old rider versus a younger rider. Is a younger rider, again, it's not, hurtful for them to think about building some muscle, but it's not as important for them because they're just naturally going to retain their muscle mass versus an older rider who's naturally going to lose muscle mass. And so you have to be doing some things to offset that. And so doing some isolation, bodybuilder type movements will help with that. So again, I think that while the bulk of what you're doing needs to be compound functional lifts, there is room for some isolation stuff, some bodybuilding stuff, and just getting a pump in your arms is always kind of fun. So again, you're not going to turn into a dysfunctional athlete just because you did a few isolation exercises. So that's the second point. The third one is you want to do a variety of set and rep schemes, but you want the bulk of your set and reps to focus on 2 to 4 sets of 3 to 8 reps. So 2 to 4 sets is enough volume to build strength and power without excessive fatigue. And so you want to do just enough to trigger a response in the body. Because remember, recovery is an important aspect of your results, right? So training actually breaks us down. Recovery is what builds us up. So you want to do the minimal effective dosage. What is the least amount that you need to do to see the best results? And so for the vast majority of people, it's going to be 2 to 4 sets. It's going to be plenty for them to see results. And the way that you kind of figure this out is start with 2 sets. And if you're doing 2 sets and you're feeling like no fatigue and no soreness from your workouts, then go to 3 sets and see how that feels. So there is something to just assessing how a workout makes you feel. And again, you're not looking to feel trash and excessively sore, but you should feel like you did something, right? Your body should feel some sort of fatigue and some minor soreness from a good workout. So like I said, you can find the volume that's going to work for you. 3 to 8 reps is going to cover the strength and power end. And again, there's a lot of variables that go with this, but in general, the lower the reps, the more you're focusing on strength. The higher the reps, the more you're focusing on hypertrophy and muscle building and maybe some local muscle endurance. And so, where exactly, you fall, there's some individual differences there for sure. But for us as mountain bikers, what we're looking for is building strength and power and maintaining or dabbling in building some extra muscle mass. And so that 3 to 8 rep range is going to do that. You're going to be low enough in the 3 to 6 range to be working on your strength. And when you start getting into like the 6, 7, 8 reps, still doing some strength, but that's starting to become enough volume for you to start stimulating some muscle growth. And so if you're spending your time between 3 to 8 reps, and you're going to be hitting the both ends of what you're looking for the most part. So I'd recommend spending 80% of your training time in that rep range. And the other 20% can fall into a higher rep range. So going up to like 10, 15, 20, even 30 reps per set is totally fine. But again, a low amount of volume of this. So like 20% of what you're doing could fall into this higher rep range area. I don't really recommend going lower than 3 reps, which is why I don't recommend spending a certain percentage of time lower than that. Again, there's time and place for it. You can certainly do it. But in general, the risk to benefit ratio isn't high enough for me to be comfortable with recommending that for most riders, right? Like you're just trying to do a single or a double on a exercise like a squat or a deadlift. The intensity level, the amount of weight that you're moving, like this is where your risk of injury is going to be the highest. And so, again, there's really just the risk to benefit ratio just isn't really there. Again, every once in a while, if you want to, load it up and test yourself and kind of see where you're, I wouldn't recommend going to a true 1 rep max. There's really no reason for that. But just kind of seeing like what, where you're at with stuff is not the worst thing in the world, but you don't need to be spending a lot of time doing 1 to 2 reps per set. 3 reps is going to be plenty low enough for you to be stimulating strength gains. And so, like I said, if you're spending the bulk of your time in that 2 to 4 sets, 3 to 8 reps range, then you're going to be covering what you want to cover. And, with that as well, just thinking about the total reps that you're doing is going to also kind of dictate what kind of results that you're getting from that workout. So if you're doing like 15 reps or less total, right? So if you're doing deadlifts, for example, and we do 15 reps total, so like 3 sets of 5 or 3 sets of 9 or 3 sets of 3, which would be like 9 reps, right? So if you're at that 15 total reps, like if you take your sets times the reps, right, that's going to give you your total volume. And if it's 15 or less, then that's most likely a strength-oriented stimulus that you are creating. If you are, 15 to say like 25 or so, then you're kind of in between strength and hypertrophy, I guess what you could call like functional hypertrophy. And then if you're going above, 25 to 30 reps, then you're focusing more on hypertrophy. So this is where like your classic like 3 sets of 10, that would be 30 total reps. That's kind of a bodybuilding leaning. You can certainly get stronger with that, but it's going to be leaning more towards like the hypertrophy end of things. And so thinking about like one phase, and I'll talk about this later, but like a phase is like a block of training that you would spend like 4 to 8 weeks focusing on, but having a phase where you're focusing on, lower reps total, right? So 15 total reps. And then a phase where you're focusing on, 15 to 25 reps. And then you have a phase where you're focusing on, maybe 30 plus reps. And again, or maybe within a workout, you can have it to where you've got like your main exercises where you're focusing on the lower reps. And then you've got a few secondary exercises where you're focusing on the higher reps, but you just know like when I'm doing my deadlifts, I'm doing 3 sets of 3, that's a strength stimulus. And at the end of my workout, I'm doing a few bicep curls and I'm doing 3 sets of 8, which would be 24 reps total, right? Well, that's getting more in kind of that functional hypertrophy range. And so just understanding, and this is a good way for you to also kind of tell like what is a workout program really working on, right? Like adding up the total sets and reps that they're having you do will give you a good idea of like what are they actually working on here, because man, they can have a great list of exercises, but if they're having you do a high amount of volume with that, then is that really building strength? And odds are no, it's not, right? And so doing fewer sets and reps is going to lead to more strength gains, but again, you don't want to be sticking to the same sets and reps all the time, but you can change that up, right? Like going from 2 sets of 5 to 3 sets of 4, right? So you can see how like you can play around with different set and rep combinations and keeping it below that 15 rep max or 15 rep total to keep it in that strength area, every once in a while progressing a little higher than that. So but again, that's just understanding how to manipulate sets and reps with your exercises is going to go a long way towards helping you make smart decisions and evaluate programs to see what they're actually working on. Again, if it's supposed to be a strength training program and you're doing 30, 40 total reps all the time, then you're not really building strength with that. Okay, so but again, it's just kind of depends on what works best for you and what your context is. But in general, if you're wanting to build strength, you need to be getting into that 15 reps or lower total range. So I actually have a blog post on my on bikejames.com that kind of goes over that. So I'll link to that in the show notes with this, so you guys can kind of see a little bit more detail about how to look at the total reps and what that does for you. So with that, since we're talking about reps and stuff, you don't need to train to failure to see results. And in my opinion, training to failure should be avoided as a 40-plus-year-old rider. And again, this is one of those things like, the idea of needing to take it to failure or even a little beyond, right? Some forced reps or, just whatever to force the body to respond. It's just not accurate. They've done studies on this. There's a lot of science that tells us that you don't need to train to failure to see results. You can train to near failure and see the same results while saving your body some wear and tear and also lowering your injury risk. So training within 1 to 3 reps of failure, right? So they call it reps in reserve, RIR. And so if you are training and you stop when you've got 1 to 3 reps in reserve, then you're going to be doing plenty, right? This usually occurs when you start to slow down during the concentric or the lifting portion of the exercise. So if you go until you feel yourself starting to slow down from the weight and fatigue, then you are in that area, right? As long as you go until you start to slow down, then you're fine. And that's going to be within that 1 to 3 reps in reserve range. Leaving 1 to 3 reps in reserve is going to help you avoid injury because training to failure is way more likely to result in technical breakdown, meaning that your technique is going to break down. And that is what can lead to either an acute, right, an immediate injury, or an overuse injury. So, if you're, again, going back to deadlifts, if you're doing deadlifts and you're trying to go to failure with them, and you start to get your low back and spine out of position, then you may either injure your back right then and there, right? Or it may just accumulate wear and tear from being in that bad position over and over and over again, until all of a sudden you start to get this pain that gets worse, and you start to get an overuse injury. So by avoiding training to failure, you're going to avoid that. And again, every once in a while, if you want to just take it to the limit, that's fine, right? But the vast majority, like 80 to 90% of the time, you should be leaving 1 to 3 reps in reserve. And so this is actually a good way to look at building up the intensity of your workouts. And so I'll talk about that here in a second too, how you can kind of use this idea. But the main takeaway here is you don't have to train to failure, and I would strongly recommend against it. As a 40-plus-year-old rider, I just don't think that the benefits outweigh the risks of doing it. So the next thing that I would recommend is to focus on a total body or upper body, lower body training split, and don't use a body part training split. So using a body part training split like a bodybuilder, right? The old school bodybuilder type split where we're training by body parts, right? So we're doing chest and back and legs and biceps. It's a great way to build muscle, right? There's a reason that bodybuilders use that, but it's not the best way to build functional strength and power. And so what you want to do is you want to focus on the movement patterns that we talked about earlier. And so you want to divide your workouts up based on those movement patterns. I personally use and recommend most of the time that you do a total body training split. And so this is where you train a lower and upper body stuff on the same day, or you can split the upper body and lower body into different days. Total body training is usually best for minimizing soreness and maximizing recovery, while the upper/lower body training split is better for creating more stress in one area, which can deliver better results with proper recovery, or it can help riders who recover really well and need more volume to stimulate progress. So remember I was talking about how if you're not getting sore or feeling any fatigue from your workouts, then you may benefit from doing an upper body, lower body split where you are just creating more stress in one general area to stimulate that progress. So I suggest starting with a total body training split and then trying the upper or / lower body training split if you feel you aren't getting fatigued enough from your workouts. But for the vast majority of people, a total body training split is going to be fine. And so again, if we're looking at this from the movement pattern standpoint, you've got 2 lower body movement patterns. You've got squat and you've got hinge. And so what I would suggest is splitting those up, right? So having a squat day and having a hinge day. And then you've got pushing and pulling. And so if you're doing squat and push and pull, and then you're doing a hinge and a push and a pull, and even within the pushing and pulling, you can break that up into horizontal where you're pressing away or pulling in towards your chest. So think like bench press and rows, and also vertical pushing and pulling where you are pushing and pulling in that vertical plane. So think like shoulder press and chin ups, right? And so you could have a training split where you're doing like squats, a bench press and a row on one day, and then the other day you're doing a hinge with a shoulder press and a chin up, right? And so this would be kind of an example of how you could split that up. And then you've also got your carrying and rotation stuff, and so you could split that up or address both of those on each day. But in general, you want to kind of focus on that total body training split. So one main lower body exercise or movement pattern that you're focusing on, and then your upper body stuff as well. And so that's a good way to split things up over the week. Don't overdo circuit training. That's the next recommendation that I have. And this is easy to do. Remember, the point of what we're wanting to do is build strength. Okay, and so Circuit training is where you are taking 3 to 4 or more exercises and doing them in a row before repeating the circuit again for the specified number of sets. And so, if you're doing like, again, we can go back to our example we were just talking about. So let's say that you're doing a squat, a bench press, and a row, and then we'll say like a farmer's walk is the carrying exercise, right? So these are like the 4 main movement skills that you're working on in your workout. And so if you were to do it to where you're doing deadlift, and then you do bench press, and then you do row, and then you do the farmer's walk, and then when you get done with that, you go back and start over at the top, right? Deadlift, bench press, row, farmer's walk. Deadlift, bench press, row, farmer's walk. This is a really popular way to train because you feel like you're getting a lot of work done in a short period of time. And it is a good way to get a lot of work done in a short period of time. But it is not great for building strength and power. You are going to be much better off if you are doing straight sets where you're either doing like one exercise, right? So do deadlift and just do deadlift, right? You do your deadlift, you do a set, you rest, and then you do another set of deadlifts and you rest, and then you do another set of deadlifts and you rest, and you repeat that 2 to 4 times or however many times you're doing for your sets, and then you move on to your next exercise. If you are really crunched for time, then you can do a superset where you are doing 2 exercises, and this works really well if you're doing like what they call them antagonistic, right? Like so opposite. So like a bench press and a row would be good exercises to superset together. And so you could do a set of bench press, rest for a little bit, do a set of rows, rest for a little bit, come back to bench press. And so that is going to be better than doing a circuit. And the reason is just because of the accumulated fatigue. Right? By the time you get done with that whole circuit and you get back to the first exercise, your body has accumulated systemic fatigue, right? Throughout your whole body is built up fatigue. And so that's going to affect your ability to really display strength and power on that exercise. And if you're wanting to get stronger, then again, you look at how strong people lift, power lifters, Olympic weightlifters, strongmen, they're not doing circuits. Right, they are doing straight sets and potentially supersets, but they're making sure that they get plenty of rest in between their sets, and they are, able to put a good effort into it. And so, don't try to turn your strength training into cardio training by overly focusing on circuit training. Right? Again, like I like circuit training, but what I'll tend to do is use circuit training for like the last bit of my workout. So I'll start out with, my top, 2-3 exercises that I'm doing, and I will do straight sets or perhaps, like I said, a superset where I've got 2 exercises I'm alternating back and forth. And then my last grouping of exercises, what I call the secondary circuit, is where I'll use a circuit, right? So I'll do like 3 or 4 exercises and I'll do them in a circuit fashion because I'm not as worried about building my strength and power with them. They're there for kind of secondary reasons, right? That's why I call it the secondary circuit. And so, but that's a good thing to keep in mind. Again, if you're looking at a strength training program and it is very circuit heavy, then it's not really effectively building strength, right? You may be getting a ton of work done, but it's not building strength in a super effective way. And again, the truth is, like, you don't need that many exercises in each workout. Like 3 to 6 exercises is plenty for most people. It is way better to focus on less and do it better, especially as you get older. Okay, so again, if you're just to have like your 3 or 4 exercises and you're either doing them in straight sets or you got a couple supersets, that's plenty, right? So if you have a training program and they're trying to get you to do 10 plus exercises, and then they're gonna have to use circuits because otherwise the freaking workout's gonna take forever, right? But it's just that's not a super effective way to build strength, right? And we don't need to be working on cardio with strength. We're getting plenty of cardio with riding our bike, and if we're doing specific cardio training. But when we're in the gym and we're working on strength training, we need to be focused on getting stronger And so circuits will actually, an over-reliance on circuit training, again, it makes you feel like you're getting a bunch of work done, get you breathing hard, and makes you feel like, oh, this is, working on my endurance too. But I promise you will see way better results if you cut back on the amount of circuits you're doing and focus, especially your core exercises at the beginning of your workout. Focus on straight sets or supersets, right, where you've got two exercises paired together, is going to work way better for you. Another piece of advice that I have is to use isometrics to help round out your strength and safeguard your health. So isometrics are exercises where you create tension, but you don't create movement. Okay, I've done several podcasts and got some different articles going over isometrics and all the different benefits and the reasons they're a great idea. So you can go check those out on bikejames.com. But at its core, isometrics have a lot of benefits for us. And, isometric strength, it is the basis for stabilization strength. And so if you want a strong, stable platform to create strength and power from, the stronger you are isometrically, the stronger you're going to be able to, or the more you're going to be able to display that strength and power. Isometrics is also a great way to practice good breathing habits during high tension efforts, which translate extremely well to the trail. So again, you're not moving, right? You're just you're creating tension without movement, which means that you don't have to focus on form. You don't have to focus on moving the right way. Like once you kind of get set, you want to make sure you stay set, right? You don't want to be like losing tension in areas and putting in areas that you don't want it. But you can really focus on tying your breathing into your tension and creating tension through your breathing. And again, that is a invaluable skill on the trail. Isometrics have also been shown to help with high blood pressure, as good or better than blood pressure medication. Isometric strength has also been linked to fewer traumatic brain injuries. And so, again, like isometric neck strength, there was a study that came out here in the last year or so that showed that the higher levels of isometric neck strength resulted in lower incidences of traumatic brain injuries in, I forget if it was soccer or football or something, but anyway, so and then also longevity, right? Like your grip strength, like isometric grip strength is one of these things that they measure when they're looking at longevity, and it's been found that as you get older, the higher your isometric grip strength is, generally speaking, the higher functioning you are as a human as well. And so just again, from our health and longevity standpoint, we're going to be seeing benefits from improving and maintaining our isometric strength. And isometric strength, everything else out there, right? Like if you want to get better at something specifically, you have to train that. So while regular strength training will improve isometric strength to some degree, several studies have shown that the best way to improve isometric strength is through isometrics. Okay, so if you really want to maximize the results from isometrics, then you need to be doing some sort of isometric training. Isometrics are a great way to train movement patterns that you can't train with weights. So either because you don't have enough equipment or you have a previous or current injury. So again, going back to our deadlift example, if you don't have access to heavy weights, right, you do need to create high levels of tension in order to stimulate strength. So just doing a bunch of reps with bands or light dumbbells or kettlebells is not going to build strength. You need something to actually create high levels of tension. And so if you don't have access to the weights to do a relatively heavy deadlift with, then you can use a towel or some other type of strap that you can pull on and isn't going to break, and get it set up. And again, I've got different videos and stuff on my at bikejames.com that you can see for some different exercise ideas. But you can create an exercise where you can create high levels of tension in this movement pattern. And so again, if you find yourself stuck without equipment, you're like, okay, I'm able to work out at home, I've got a little bit of equipment or even no equipment at all, right? There's great bodyweight exercises and things that you can do, but at some point, if you want to get stronger, you have to, expose your body to high levels of tension. And so isometrics are a great way to do that. And also if you have an injury, right? So let's say if your low back gives you problems whenever you do heavy deadlifts, well, then you can use isometrics to still train that deadlift movement pattern, that hip hinge movement pattern, expose your body to high levels of tension, but do it in a very safe way because you're not creating movement. You're not putting the same type of stress on your joints. And so you can, enjoy the benefits without the risk. And also if you have like a current injury, right? If you're nursing something, you're coming back from an injury, isometrics are a great way to start reintroducing your body to creating tension in these movement patterns, but do it in a safe way. So, if you're healthy, and what I mean by that is if you don't have a lot of injuries, like there's people that I have worked with that just are so banged up or just have other things going on that's like, man, the vast majority of what you're going to do is going to be isometrics, right? Like you're going to do 2 to 3 days a week of mostly isometrics, and they see great results from it, right? Because for their context, that's what's best for them. But again, if you're relatively healthy, then I'd recommend doing at least 1 day a week of isometric training to round out your strength and longevity program. So if you're training 3 days a week, which is what, like I said, I recommend most people shoot for, that's going to be 2 days of movement-based training where you're doing kind of your more traditional exercises where you're creating movement, and then 1 day where you're doing isometrics. And so that's a great combination, right? A great way to use everything to your advantage as a 40-plus-year-old rider. The next thing I wanted to talk about is building up the intensity of your workouts over several weeks. So you don't want to come out and go as hard as you can in week 1 of a new program. This is a big problem that I see with people. They're all excited. Hey, I got a new workout program. I'm going to go to the gym, man. I'm going to get after it, right? But the problem is this leaves you no room to improve, and you're going to be maxing out your recovery abilities really soon, right? So if you go in the gym week 1 and you just get after it and you walk out of there and you're like, man, I went to failure on everything. Well, what are you going to do the next week? Right? Like you want to give yourself room to build up and gain momentum. And again, if you want to know how to get stronger, look at how the strongest people in the world train. And when you look at strength athletes, powerlifters, weightlifters, strongmen, how they train, they build momentum into their max efforts. They're not in the gym maxing out every day, right? Like they will start below their max levels and systematically build up and build momentum into those max levels. And again, they do this because they have found that you're going to end better, right? So if you've got 8 weeks and you started easy in week 1 and built momentum into the end of the program, by week 8, you're going to be lifting more weight and you're going to be in way better condition physically and mentally than if you went in week 1 and maxed out and then just tried to like hang on with your freaking fingernails to the end of week 8. Like you're probably going to end up losing strength and going backwards at some point if you do that. So you want to start out easy in week 1, moderate in week 2, and then hard in week 3. And then week 4 should be a deloading week where you are backing off to give your body a chance to recover from the hard week. So only 1 out of every 4 weeks should be really hard, where you're pushing yourself near your limits. And so a good way to think about this is also to use that reps in reserve idea we talked about earlier, right? So week 1, leave 3 reps in reserve. Right? Feel like you get to the point where you could do 3 more reps, and that's when you rack the weight. Week 2, leave 2 reps in reserve, and week 3, leave 1 rep in reserve, or go to failure if you must. And then, like I said, week 4, you back off again. You go back to the 3 reps in reserve, cut back maybe a little bit on the weight and the volume. A little less weight, maybe 1 less set. And so again, you're trying to deload and give your body a chance to recover from that hard effort that you put in week 3. But again, if you do this, if you build up intensity like I'm recommending here, you're going to end up way stronger, and you're going to do it in a way that's way more sustainable. Because remember, like what we're after is something that's sustainable and delivers stable results. And so that's the best way to do it. The other thing that I recommend is to change your workouts every 4 to 8 weeks, with longer periods with the same workout being better. I'm convinced that we change workouts far too often. Okay, and part of this, there's a psychology that goes into the fitness field, where, hey, every month we're going to get a new workout sheets. I mean, some freaking programs, like I was talking about CrossFit earlier, like they're giving you a new workout every time you come in the gym for the most part. And so, but the reality is that you would be better off sticking with the same workout program and changing it up every 6 to 8 weeks. As long as you're able to continue to progress, right? As long as you're adding load and or reps, there isn't a huge need to change workouts. Like, your body is not going to stop seeing results because you did the same exercises for 8 weeks. Like, trust me, that is not going to happen. In fact, you're going to see better results if you are following the intensity recommendation I just made, where you're building up, right, to easy in week 1, moderate week 2, hard in week 3, deload in week 4. I guarantee you that odds are super high that you could go through that cycle one more time and actually end up lifting more weight and doing more reps the second time through it on that third hard week, right? And so you could go through it up to 8 weeks and still be delivering results. I mean, you could do it longer than that if you wanted, right? As long as you are still seeing progress, there's no need to have to change what you're doing, right? We're after strength here, and strength is a skill. And the more often you're able to practice the exercises, the more often you're able to practice the skill behind them, the stronger you're going to get with them. And so longer periods of time means more chances to build that skill behind the exercises you're doing, which this builds mastery, and it also lowers your chance of injury, right? Because if you think about it, the first week of a new workout is usually the worst. There's another reason that I recommend not going balls out first weekend, because you're going to be the most sore from the new exercises and the new loading parameters, right? And so, but that soreness is going to interfere with your ability to ride well, to do other things. And so again, it needs to happen, right? But if you're able to do that every 8 weeks instead of every 4 weeks, I mean, you've literally cut in half the amount of time that you're spending, super sore and slightly crippled from a new workout program. And so this is going to leave you feeling better when you're riding and just during your everyday life. So there's a lot of benefits from dragging this out longer than 4 weeks. Again, if 4 weeks is the minimum that I would recommend that you stick with the same workout program. I definitely would not recommend changing things up more often than that. But I would recommend exploring longer training or periods with a workout program as a 40 plus year old rider. You're probably going to find that you'll benefit from it and feel better from it as well. So my last piece of advice is to not look to social media don't lift for social media, and don't look to social media for new ideas. And again, there's definitely very smart people out there that have great stuff to share. But a lot of the stuff that you see on social media, especially from these fitness influencers, which means basically that like they haven't done shit. They just look good and they make cool videos, and they're not really that you want to make sure that you're taking advice from people who not only look good themselves and ride good themselves, but have trained other people to do it as well. Like if you just looking at what someone has done themselves is nowhere near as valuable for you as looking at what they've been able to do with other people. And so it's another reason, you look at some of the best coaches in sports, they're not the best players, right? Like Michael Jordan didn't make a great coach. Your best coaches were usually mediocre to average players who really had to dig down and study and figure out the intricacies of what they were doing, because they weren't naturally talented. And then they were able to pass those lessons on to other players that they worked with and help produce good players and good athletes that way. So again, sometimes the most naturally gifted and talented people make the worst coaches, because things just come so easy for them that they never really had to dig down and figure out exactly what's going on and what makes them successful. And so like I said, lifting for social media, man, probably my number one thing that I see with this is people doing fucking box jumps, man. Like, you do not need to be piling boxes, stuff as high as you can, and seeing how high you can jump on a box. Like, oh God, it makes me cringe. I have seen just so many just cringy attempts by people who, I don't know whether a trainer told them to do it or they're just, again, doing it for the gram or whatever, but they are trying to jump up on boxes that they can barely get on, and they either barely make it or they don't make it. And then it's like, you don't want, like I said, if you're hurt, it doesn't matter how fit you are. So if you bang up your shins and hurt your knee, screwing up some sort of like box jump that you were trying to record to impress everybody on Instagram, man, you're an idiot, right? Like, that is not a good trade-off for you. So, trying to look cool on social media, that's a young person's game, right? Let those let them play that game, right? So, you don't need to be maxing out your deadlift or trying to jump up on a bunch of boxes and recording that and posting it, okay? That'll just get you in trouble over time. And again, like I said, the stuff that you see on social media, most of the time is there to get likes and to look cool, and it's probably not the most productive use of your time. So stick with the basics and weigh the risk to benefit ratio when you try new things, and just, for God's sake, stop trying to jump up on freaking high boxes. Like, you can do a box jump and jump onto a box. It doesn't have to be testing your limits, right? Like, power is best developed at 50 to 80%. Maybe sometimes even a little less than that, right? Like, but you going like 90 to 100% is not developing power, right? Like, that's testing the power that you have, but you're not building more power by doing that. And so, if you want to do box jumps for some reason, just make sure that it's something that you can comfortably jump up on. Like, you can jump higher than the box and land on it, right? So, again, that's one of my pet peeves is seeing, mountain bike athletes setting up and trying to do these box jumps. It's just like, dude, you guys are, wasting your time and potentially hurting yourselves for nothing with that. So, all right. So to finish out here, what does all of this look like in real life, right? I just gave you guys a bunch of advice. It's, kind of ideas, but what does that look like in a concrete program? And so what I'm going to do, you'll find in the show notes, I'll include a link that will have a current program that I am using for myself. And you'll see that this program format is also very similar to what I use in my online training programs, especially the Ultimate MTB Workout Program. And what you'll see when you look at the workout is you're going to see one power exercise. So one exercise at the beginning where we're focused on moving quickly against a sub-max load, right? I'm not trying to lift heavy. I'm trying to lift quickly with it. And so one power exercise. I've got two main exercises that are an upper body and a lower body lift. And then I've got 3 or 4 secondary exercises that hit other movements or muscle groups that I want to target. And I do those in a circuit fashion. And so you'll see that I'm using straight sets for the first 3 exercises, the power and the main exercises, and then circuit training for the last group of exercises. Sometimes I will, like I said, do a superset. So I may do like combine a couple exercises together. So if I'm doing like, deadlift and shoulder press, I may combine those together. So instead of having straight sets where I do all deadlifts and then I do all shoulder presses, I may do a set of deadlifts and then a set of shoulder presses and then a set of deadlifts. But again, I'm not having like 3-4 different exercises, and I'm giving myself plenty of rest. As far as like rest intervals go, I guess I probably should have touched on this as well, but like, you want to wait until you're able to catch your breath. Right? They call it the talk test. And right, we should all be familiar with this as mountain bikers. We talk about the talk test as being something that you use during cardio training to let you know when you are getting close to your anaerobic threshold. And so if you're still panting hard and can't talk without having to take some deep breaths, you're not recovered enough to start strength training again. And so you want to wait until you've recovered your breathing, you're able to pass that talk test, then you're able to move on and go to the next exercise. Because again, this is strength training. We're not trying to turn strength training into cardio training. So don't be trying to keep a high pace and turn this into something that it's not supposed to be. So like I said, after like 6 to 8 weeks of this routine, I'll switch it up by changing the exercises, the sets and reps, but the same basic outline for the most part. I'm gonna follow, which is a power exercise, 2 to 3 main lifts for my core movement patterns, and then a secondary circuit, 3 to 4 exercises working on some other things that I want to target. And again, if I'm short on time, that secondary circuit is what I cut out, right? I'll get in the gym, I'll make sure I get in the first, three or four main lifts, and then, I can cut out the secondary stuff and be fine. So these are the basic parameters that I focus on with my own training and the clients who I work with who are in the 40 plus crowd. Focusing on doing fewer things, but at a higher level of focus and mastery is one of the themes that I try to push with these workouts. It's not about doing more stuff. It's about doing less stuff, but doing it better. Okay. You can and you should train hard as a 40 plus year old athlete. You just have to be smarter about when and how you push yourself to the limit. And obviously hard is a context, right? Like contextually hard for a 40 plus year old athlete is going to be different than for a 20 something year old athlete. But it should still, just because you're older and nursing some injuries and stuff is not an excuse to not find ways to train hard and continue to challenge the body in ways that make and keep it strong. So you can find more training tips like this at bitejames.com. You can also sign up for my newsletter there, where I send you out an email when I'm posting new podcasts and new articles and videos. And I've also got several free workouts and guides that I offer there. So if you want to check out, kettlebell training or bodyweight training or dumbbell training, I've got several different free workouts that you can sign up for there to check out. So again, if you want to see kind of how I, use these parameters that I've laid out in different ways, and then you can go get a free sample and see what I do by signing up there. You can also find the training programs that I've created using these principles, especially my 40 plus year old MTB rider training program. That is the only training program out there that incorporates a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about here, like isometrics. Breath work is another thing. I didn't talk about this here, but breath work is something that can really help improve your cardio, improve your overall, mental well-being, improve your, just a bunch of different things. There's a lot of benefits to doing breath work. And so the 40 plus year old rider program incorporates breath work, isometric, strength training, all of this stuff into a comprehensive training program for the 40 plus year old rider. Covers the cardio, mobility, everything that you need to ride better today, and also to achieve our goal of riding for a lifetime. Lastly, I want to remind you to check out the Catalyst pedal at pedalinginnovations.com. That is the pedal that I invented based on actual science and movement principles. It's the world's only pedal designed to provide the natural support that your foot needs, which relieves a lot of pain, a lot of bike-related pain, and it improves performance. I mean, it almost not a week goes by that we don't get an email from someone telling us how the Catalyst pedal has helped their riding, especially from a pain relief standpoint. People that have done everything. They've had the bike fits, they've done all the different inserts, they've done everything that the bike industry tells them that they're supposed to do, and they're still hurting, they're still suffering pain. And then they switch to the Catalyst pedal, and because they get the natural foot support that their foot needs, it now starts to let their body function more naturally and takes a lot of that stress off of sensitive areas like the ankle, the Achilles tendon, knees, low back. And so a lot of that cycling related pain is probably related to your pedals. And so if you fix that, you're going to fix the pain. And it also, like I said, improves your performance. You'll be able to pedal with more power. You're going to have more stability on the downhills, able to corner better. Just across the board, you're going to function better on your bike because you are stabilizing your foot in the best way possible. So again, you can check out the Catalyst pedal at pedalinginnovations.com. So that's it for now. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to let me share some info with you guys. Again, if you have any questions or comments about this, you can hit me up at james@bikejames.com. I'm always happy to help. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed this one, and I will talk to everybody next time.